Hello and welcome. My name is Errity Green, and today I am bringing you a reading on your comeback. So this will be both a fun and meaningful reading, as most of my readings are. After the reading, feel free to check out my website, erritygreen.com, as well as my socials and my other YouTube channels as well. So today I will have 4 different piles for you to choose from. As always, you are choosing from left to right. All right, so card pile 1. Here is your reading, your comeback. So I feel like you've been very, very, very patient. There has been a deep, deep kind of cellular, spiritual healing going on as you are shifting out of the old and into the new. And I feel like this has been multi-layered, multi-seasonal, just many phases, many shades, many layers. It's like that pulling up and out of, right? It reminds me like pulling back the layers of an onion, or the Russian doll, where it felt like, okay, I'm healed, I'm coming out of this season or this time of, it could have felt like challenge, but it doesn't feel like that. It just feels very cocoon-like, where you could have been withdrawn or felt withdrawn, or been isolated, felt isolated, and or you didn't feel like yourself, right? So you were in a time where it felt more introspective, or was introspective, more reflective, more healing in nature, right? More inner focused than outer focused. During those times, we can tend to have lower energy, or keep to ourselves more, or feel more reflective, or introverted in nature. So however it showed up for you, there was this deep healing happening that almost felt like it would just last forever, because it was like, okay, I'm done. And then you'd be in another unlayering. You'd be like, okay, I'm done. And then there'd be another sort of sloughing off. And I don't know in the process if you were aware that this is what was happening, but it almost felt like, okay, I'm done and we're not. Okay, I'm done and we're not. Okay, I'm done and we're not. So this could have been many seasons, many cycles, many phases, many years for some of you. It doesn't have to be like it's been multiple years for all of you, because when I say that, it doesn't feel that way, but it feels like multi-phase. And so for many of you, you've been a deep healing and or transformational phase for a very long time, at least in your perspective or your eyes. And I feel like the ultimate sort of, I mean, not to put this in like an abysmal way, but that death has occurred. And I don't mean physical death, like, right, that you have faced your ultimate mortality and passed. Clearly, you're here watching this channel. But it feels like that big chunk of energy, all the things that were moving and changing and sort of sloughing away, most of that clearing, if not all of it, has been completed. So it's almost like that energy of, okay, this phase or this level of the video game has been completed, right? So if you think of a video game when there's like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or level 1, 2, 3, and on and on. Okay, that level has been completed. It's like whatever needed to clear has cleared now, or has quote unquote finally cleared, and it feels relatively permanent. So it's like that change has been completed. So it kind of reminds me of one of those situations where it's like you feel like you're done, but you're not done. And I know I've already said that, but I'm trying to give a practical example to it. Okay, here's an example. You know, when you go to school, and I mean, we'll say college as an example. So it's like you finish freshman year, and let's just say you don't really, well, and obviously we choose to go to college, we know we're in college, but let's just say you're in sort of a spiritual transformation or emotional transformation or deep kind of cellular healing transformation like we're speaking to. You're not always conscious or aware of what's happening, right? You're aware that something is happening, but you don't know what or how long or oftentimes why or where you're going, or, you know, or where you're going to be on the other side of all of this. So it's a little bit different. It's more uncertain and unpredictable. With that said, let's act like it's sort of like college, where it's like you finish freshman year and you're like, okay, oh my gosh, that was a lot. Okay, whatever. I must be done. It's like, oh, nope, you got sophomore year. Okay, I must be done. Okay, junior, and then senior. And then it's like, okay, I've actually gotten somewhere. I'm actually done. This is a permanent change where you come out of that a different person. You come out of that having gained, having lost, having changed, wisdom gained, lessons learned. And so it feels like that, where it was like, for a long time, one doorway would close but yet another one would open. One doorway would close and then another one would open. And it was almost like this never ending cycle of transformation for you. But it does feel complete. There is a resolution or resolve here in terms of, okay, that is over, that is done, that is final. The death has occurred in full completion, right? That completion mode is over. And now you're stepping into the new. So it's no more of that same old rehash cycle where you feel like you're done and you're not. You're truly on the other side of this thing. Right. So now that this time is over, no kidding, you have two creative or creator cards are right next to each other. When I don't always share my cards, I know some people really love that. I do show you the piles, and I know that's not fun for everybody. But when I used to try to share each and every one of them, it would throw off my quote unquote channeling. And then that made it more difficult for me to give you the messages that I want to give you. So when I'm having to choose between visual or messages, I choose messages. So I do apologize for that. But that's just how I read. Of course, there are many other channels that do provide the pictures. So this is about stepping into that next level. But it's interesting because it doesn't feel so much like, okay, this is already planned out for you. This is set out for you. Here's your level 2. Here you go. That's if you were at level 1. Of course you weren't. But, I would say it's more like level 18 and stepping into level 20, right? Something like that. But even so, not to even put any kind of hierarchy or numerical order on it, it's like, okay, but now you get to decide what your life looks like now. So it's like you've been through this phase, this permanent change, you are out of the shift, you're on the other side of it. Now, what would you like your life to look like? What would you like your everyday to look like? What do you want to create? What do you want to achieve? How do you want to live? What matters most to you? So now you're in this phase or cycle of, it feels like the seeds have long been planted, but it's like cultivating that, right? Or watering what you want to water, or continuing to till the soil in the areas you want to fertilize and grow and the areas you want to flourish. So it's interesting because I feel like the seeds have long been since planted. So maybe this was something that was destined or fated or something you've long been working on or focused on in some ways, but because it does feel refreshed and it does feel new, but it feels like it's not brand new to where it's like, okay, I'm starting from scratch. So when I say planting seeds, I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, I've been working so hard and if I'm planting seeds, who knows? It just feels like you are deciding the direction of this chapter. You are more in charge and taking the lead of this chapter than you have previous chapters. And I think that was part of the change, part of the shift. So that no longer are the subconscious influences taking charge as much as they did before. No longer is it just your automatic emotional reactions or emotional kind of stunted areas of yourself, but we all have those, our inner child, inner wounded child. No longer is, maybe these things that used to sort of take charge, whether it be your fears, right? Your automatic impulses, your emotions, whatever they were that were sort of holding you back. Perhaps you had karma you were working out, or karmic pulls, karmic ties, where you were being drawn to certain people, places, and things that ultimately weren't where you wanted to go, but it was something that you had to resolve, something you had to reconcile. That's just how life works. The cosmos works by, there aren't any loose ends. We have to tie them all up. So it's like if there was a long-term contract or agreement in the soul to continue to interact or engage with a certain soul, as an example, that would have to be addressed, resolved, completed, and cleared in order to do something different. So we're drawn subconsciously into these sort of entanglements or engagements with people, places, things, old agreements. Old agreements die hard when it comes to the cosmos, meaning we have to show up, we have to resolve them and bring them to completion or clear or release them to be able to move on. So you were clearing some kind of karma or old entanglements or old even agreements and contracts that perhaps no longer worked for you. You might have really traversed a lot of territory in this life, really quantum leaped to the point where a lot of those old karmic ties weren't going to cut it for you this lifetime. It was like those things weren't going to be good enough. You weren't going to settle for less. And perhaps your destiny, your fate, where you wanted to go, where even life wanted to take you, or what you said you wanted to do as a soul, was going to require a greater clearing than perhaps you even expected, or maybe even your soul. And then you get there and you're like, hoa, wowza. And so it's like, in order for you to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish and set out to be and do and achieve or create, all of this karma was going to have to be cleared. These old identities, these old contracts, agreements, and these subconscious sort of agreements that we make unknowingly. Because sometimes we'll say to ourselves, we'll make an agreement with ourselves, not realizing it, that, oh, okay, if success means, this is like one sort of silly, trivial example that may not be resonant for any of you or even all of you, but I'm giving you an example of what it's like to make a subconscious agreement with ourselves. In a previous life, you're like, oh, if success means that it hurts or that I fail or that everything is taken from me, then never mind, I will resign to a lack of success or poverty. So you see how we can kind of resign ourselves to a certain agreement, not even knowing we're making that agreement for many lifetimes. We might even just be thinking we're making it for this one. But then when we enter the next life, we're entering into that agreement until it's seen, resolved, completed, or cleared and released, right? So it's like if you were wanting success, say in this life as an example, or love or whatever, and you guys' stuff is more specific and particular. I feel like some of you, at least, or most of you have an idea of what is intended for you this life and what shape or form it's going to take. To some degree, you may not know all of it, but it was going to require a completion of those old karmic cycles and entanglements so that you could have more of a quote unquote clear or clean slate to move forward. So this next level is going to be up to you because you've done the work of clearing that karmic stuff or old identities or whatever so that you can step into the new. Okay, so let's see here what this energy is. 1 second. Okay, got it. As soon as I said 1 second and paused to contemplate, it was immediate. So this is about doing away with this old identity. You already know this. And I feel like I almost don't have to speak to it because to give words and energy to a past structure that's already left feels unnecessary and maybe even unbeneficial because why point to something that's already gone? But it's here, so I'm just going to say it. Where it's a matter of holding on loosely to any of the ideas you once had about where you would go or what you would do or how you would do it or what you would be or what you would become or how it might look or how it might work, because it feels like the old structures that were once a part of your experience, your life plan, your path have been cleared away for even bigger, better, greater things. So it's saying hold on loosely to those ideas. Hold on flexibly to what you've thought or how you thought it would go or how you thought it would look, because a lot of that stuff, those mental structures might be there, but the energy has cleared, the emotional aspect has cleared, like the subconscious stuff and entanglements and magnetism and all those draws and stuff that brings us together with this, the people, places, and things we're meant to encounter in our lives. A lot of that stuff has been cleared. So be a little bit more loose, be a little bit more flexible with how things might go. Again, I feel like it can sound sort of contradictory or paradoxical because on one hand, I'm saying, get creative. You can do this level the way that you want to. And then I'm saying, but hold it loosely. And you're not so sure. And a lot of that stuff has cleared. But it's like you get to choose from here, but you're going to likely do things different than how you would have done them before. Number one, they might look different. You might even have different desires now or feel different than you once did. And a lot of this is going to be clear to you already as it is. And then on top of that, though, if for some reason you feel resistance or a lack of clarity or something feels like sort of messy or whatever, it's like a lot of the things that used to hold you back won't. And to be more flexible, open, and available to what comes up now in this realm, on this path, with this new chapter, because things are more than likely going to look different than the way you would have expected before, right? So if you were operating from Windows 2.0 and now you have stepped into Windows 11.0, you're kind of familiar with the program, but it's a totally different paradigm, baby. And so that's what I'm saying, where it's like similar program because it's still you and you're still your soul, but this is a totally different program or slash, I think paradigm feels better, that you're operating from, a totally different operating system. So don't get too like hell-bent on like, oh, it has to be this or it has to look this way or this is the way it was going to go or the way I thought it was going to go, because that a lot of that stuff has expired, feels like fresh energy, totally new territory or horizon or new beginning that's available for you. So not holding on too tight to the things that you thought or that were once going to be, if that makes sense. I do feel like you have cleared the way for something so much bigger and brighter, and things will get clearer with each step you take and the more traction that you build with every step that you take, and then it'll become clear what is available as opposed to what was, because what once was is no longer. So your comeback card pile 1 is all about new identity, new paradigm, new operating system, having cleared old karma, old subconscious draws. A lot of those attachments, investments, agreements have been cleared. The loose ends that needed to be tied up and addressed, reconciled, or resolved in whatever way have been reconciled. And now the world is in your hands. So it's at your fingertips. Like whatever you want shall be, but be flexible with it because it's even bigger and brighter than you could have ever expected. in the old operating system you were once in. So card pile 1, that is your reading. If you find you enjoy this reading, please do like, subscribe, share. ErrityGreen.com. You can check out my website there, as well as my other YouTube channels and socials. Thank you, card pile 1. All right, card pile 2, this is your reading. We're talking about your comeback. So right off the bat, the energy feels very similar to card pile 1, but it does develop in a much different way. But in the event that you were deciding between 1 and 2, you might check out 1 and then check out 2, or check out 2 and then 1, but both, because they sound similar. With that said, because we are talking about a comeback, I'm thinking a lot of these piles might very much sort of land and add up in a similar way, even if it goes in a different direction, if that makes sense. Because for a comeback, that means one thing had to end and another thing had to start. And that's basically what we're seeing here with both card pile 1, card pile 2 so far. So it's saying an old chapter has come to a close. Whatever was there before, whatever season or phase of your life was underway before, this has come to a close. It has come to a completion. Whatever it is you were working on, focusing on, the inner work that you were doing, the integration work you were doing, you've gotten there. Ta-da! You've crossed the finish line. Card pile 2. Give yourself a pat on the back and a celebration, a hoorah. You did it. You are on the other side of it. And that might bring emotion or exhilaration or joy, or it will probably bring something through here as I say that, because it feels emotionally moving as I share it. But it's like you've crossed the finish line. You've done it. There is cause for celebration here. A celebration is in order, and you get to know it. There's something about marking this for you, because perhaps it has been difficult or treacherous or tiresome or whatever in some way that felt like it waned on your spirit a little bit, and it felt a little bit draining, or it felt like it would last forever. And it's saying, no, you've done it. You've crossed the finish line. Whatever marathon you were on or running, even though it doesn't feel like it was marathon, it feels like it was more of like a sinking or being buried alive. That sounds really dramatic, but it just feels like intense and heavy and weighted and tumultuous and never ending, like that kind of experience. That has come to a close. So you've crossed this finish line, and now the world is in your hands. It's like, it's in the palm of your hand, whatever it is that you want to be, do, create, achieve, aspire to from here. It's like the veil has lifted. You've changed the dial on the television. I'm trying to come up with some kind of analogy or practical example of what I mean by this, because it can help us sort of land what I'm sharing sometimes. But all of that to say, whatever inner work you have been doing, you have done it. It has come to a close, and you are carrying on to the next phase, the next season, the next cycle of your life. I feel like you're coming into a place of, as a result of this, you've come into a place of greater empowerment, greater self-leadership, where you feel more empowered, you feel more able, you feel more capable, you have the capacity, you're able to take your own life by the reins, so to speak, and gear it or direct it or guide it in whatever direction you would like. You have more power at this point. So it's not speaking to the old energy very much, which I think is great, because you're in a comeback, and let's focus on that. With that said, because it's saying this chapter is coming to a close, and it's saying that you have more energy available now or more power available now, what that tells me is at some point you might have been operating from a place without even knowing it sometimes. This is usually subconscious, unconscious. We don't even know it, where it's like other impulses were guiding the direction and force of our lives, right? Insecurity, proving ourselves worthy, convincing ourselves of our own value, trying to show up and show people how loving or how lovable and worthy and valuable we are, right? A lot of that old stuff can guide our lives, guide our choices, guide our decisions. And we don't even realize like our whole life is being guided by insecurity and a belief in our own unlovability and lack of worth and value, as opposed to believing in ourselves, loving in ourselves, and coming from that place. So that's my example in terms of, where you were operating at once from a limited sort of purview or capability that has now shifted into something more expansive, where you do have more power in your hands, power at your fingertips, where you have more sort of life force energy, personal will to be able to direct your life in the way that you want to. Meaning, even if your desires haven't changed or aspirations haven't changed or whatever, because when I say in the way you want to, you might like, oh, I was doing that before. But where was it coming from? Where was the motivation? And ultimately, there was a lot of subconscious stuff, maybe even fear, doubts, self-consciousness, that kind of stuff that was holding you back, whether you realize it or not. And now you've moved on from a lot of that, healed a lot of that, shifted a lot of that well enough to be able to have more power, more leadership, and empowerment to step into the next phase of your life. Yeah, so where you once used to hit up against fear or hit up against illusion or self-limiting beliefs or whatever, like it feels like a stubbornness in the mind, like a stickiness, like a hitting up against a wall, a limit, where you once used to have these blocks, so to speak. These feel like mental blocks. They could also be emotional mental blocks. Sorry. They could also be emotional blocks, but this feels more like a mental block where, again, the fear, doubt, illusion, whatever, it's like you're moving into a place where you're a little bit more playful and exploratory and flexible. I feel like you would get kind of hung up on, you know, your fears more so than truth. So I'm going to try to come up with an example here. What's an example we could use? It's like when you think something has to go one way, you know, it also brings up sort of like that perfectionism or this belief that we have to know everything in advance or have everything certain or clear or specified before we go do something. Or again, we take it too seriously, or it has to be a certain way or take a certain form. I want there to be a precise example. I like to offer that for you guys, but in the event we don't get it, it just feels like there was a limit before and you'd hit up against this wall within yourself. And I'm sure you know that feeling in one way or another for yourself. And now it's going to be much more playful, taking it less seriously, much more exploratory. You know, your comeback is all about being willing to explore, being willing to enjoy the process, being willing to follow the process into different results, as opposed to focusing so much on the outcome. And I think that might have been that resistance too. When I'm talking about those mental blocks, it might have been like, where's this going and how long is it going to take and what form is it going to take? And I must know the exact details in advance, specified down to the minutia of all variables. You know, it was like that's so much intensity, like so much limitation. I mean, there's just, how do you get out of that? You know, that's more or less a mental prison. You might not realize it when you're doing it. It's a stubbornness that it's hard for the energy of the universe to work with. So it's like a lot of that has been done away with and or is more flexible to where it's much more exploratory and playful. Again, you're showing up and you're just going to try it, right? You're showing up and you're just going to do it. You're going to just show up and just keep showing up and doing it and doing it. It doesn't have to turn out a certain way or take a particular form. Of course, we can have hopes and ambitions. It's not saying like you're giving up all hope and ambition and dreams and just saying, I'm rolling with it. I'm in the flow, baby. And if you are, that's perfect. I mean, that's kind of what it's speaking to here, being in the flow of play and joy. It doesn't need to look a certain way or be a certain way or turn out a certain way, but it feels more like, so it can feel like that for some of you, but it feels more like, of course, your mind's going to be on board and you're going to have dreams and ambitions, goals and ideas of how you want things to turn out or results that could be, but you're way less attached to it. You're way less emotionally invested in it. You're not so intensely stubborn to where there's really nothing for the energy to work with, if that makes sense. Because you're more playful, because you're more open, because you're more flexible, because you're taking more of the role of witness or observer instead of holding on for life. There's more for you to work with, more for the energy of the universe to work with, and then more possibility for greater outcomes and results. So it just feels like more flexible, less stubborn in your approach or the way that you feel like it needs to be or needs to go or the way that you need to do it. It's like that feels like it's lifted in some way or become more flexible or softened in some way. So now you're just going to, so here's an example, and I'll just use either a business example or like a creative endeavor example. So let's just say like a YouTube channel like I have, right? And some of you might have one. I'm not getting that energy, but it's very well possible. But just speaking to a creative endeavor and giving this example where you might have this idea of, okay, I'm showing up on YouTube and I'm doing this and I want this amount of subscribers and this amount of time and I'm going to do it this way and it has to look like this and it has to take this much time and and it's only going to be this way, right? Let's just say that was like the rigidity or the stubbornness or the mental block that was there before, or like I have to know exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to get there. And it has to go this way, meaning it can't change, it can't evolve, it can't shift. New ideas aren't possible because it's so rigid, it's so stubborn kind of thing. Now it's more like I'm going to put up a video this amount of time and I'm just going to focus on the doing. I'm going to focus on the expression, the endeavor, the project itself, and whatever happens, happens. You know, you're not hanging your coat on it. You're not putting your life on it, your life on the line here. It's just like, I'm going to show it up and I'm going to do the thing, and whatever happens, happens. You're just much more flexible and open and available to whatever outcomes or results can come your way. But there is an aspect of joy and play here. It's like allowing yourself to experience it and enjoy it without it being something so heavy, intense, stubborn, or rigid. Let's see what else is here. Okay, so you went through this period of change, and part of where this change and this transformation has brought you is into a place of a broader perspective. This feels like that observer role again, the witness role, where it's like you're not so heavily invested in, one way or the right way or the only way. You're not so heavily invested even in your own identity and your own ideas about how things should go or should be, because you recognize that they're limited. You're just able to step outside of yourself. You're able to step outside of, any previous mental blockages or ones that still reside, and you're able to see the bigger picture. You're able to be less invested. You're able to be more detached. And as a result, you're able to be more flexible, and you're able to allow shifts and evolution and change and transformation. And we have to be flexible in order to allow that energy in, for new energy to come through. It's like that flexibility has to be there for any kind of transformation or an experience of new results. So before, where you might have been holding on so tightly, where nothing could budge, nothing could move unless it was going to go your way, now it's more opened up to where things can move, change, or even be released and something else brought in. So card pile 2, your comeback is, I feel like you're leaving behind a phase of healing or integration or inner work, like you've come to the other side of it. So awesome. And now it's up to you how you move forward, and there's more power and sort of choice available for you. And at this point, it's going to be much more exploratory, much more playful, much more enjoyable, where you're just going along with the process as opposed to focusing so much on either results, outcomes, specifics, timetables, all those sort of practical things that can get in the way of our creative spirit. So card pile 2, that was your reading. I sure hope it served you. Do check out my website, erritygreen.com, as well as my other YouTube channels and socials, all linked below. Thank you, card pile 2. All right, card pile 3, we're talking about your comeback. So I feel like you went through a period, this is so interesting, all of the readings are opening up the same way. But it doesn't surprise me, because we're talking about a comeback. So something has to end for something else to then be reinvented or reemerge or emerge at all. So I feel like that's why they're all opening the same way. But even so, card pile 3, I feel like you went through a time of facing some of your deep bottom dweller fears, some of those subconscious things you don't even realize until they come up, and then it's like terrifying. But you've been through a time of like facing your fears, your inner demons, your inner monsters, so to speak, where you really had to face yourself, get honest with yourself, and navigate some deep and murky and difficult waters, sort of that walking the valley of the shadow of death, so to speak, where it can be a devil's playground, where it's very intense and can be frightening and terrifying and all the things to the ego that is having to either face or encounter something for the first time and or learn to manage it and or heal it or clear it or release it or whatever. In a way where you then feel grounded and stable and balanced after. I do feel like you've come into this balance. I do feel like you have come into a more integrated space. I do feel like you have more tools and strength and empowerment at your disposal. I feel like you took 2 feet on the ground. You have a lot more space in you to be able to manage or handle either old, what do they call them? Hungry ghosts of the past. So any of those old demons or fears or whatever it is that they come up, you're much more well-resourced now to be able to handle them and manage them. You're just much more centered and at peace and able to sort of gather yourself in those moments when and if this comes up for you, to where you're able to respond in a way that is more conscious, intentional, and true for you, right? So perhaps in the past, it could have been responding with terror and fright and losing yourself completely, and sort of, even though you might have traumatic responses or PTSD or whatever, where it's very difficult to find your grounding in your current present moment and physical reality. You might have even required support at one point or another. And all of that to say, you're now able to sort of find your own 2 feet in those situations, even if it's scary or scary momentarily. Those experiences happen much less frequently, or they're much lighter, much less intense than they once were. Again, you remain grounded and stable and aware of your present moment, and you're able to see yourself through those challenges and difficulties significantly more than you were able to before. So I just feel like you have found this groundedness within you, and this peace within you, and just more capacity and resources to walk with yourself, to face your fears, to manage your life experience, your inner world and your outer world, than you did before. And I feel like at this time, it's like you have shifted out of that, and now you're coming into a place of spreading your wings and flying. So I feel like for a time, as a result of your fears, as a result of the experiences that you had that maybe even led to the fears, again, this could be a pile that went through a trauma or a series of traumas, or was facing trauma for the first time in their life that was from childhood or young adulthood or whatever. It's like after a time of sort of patching up your wounds, licking your wounds, and doing what you needed to do, perhaps cocooning or reflection, introspection, support of other people, you're coming into a time of spreading your wings and leaving that comfort zone behind. So it's like you might have created this little safe space, sanctuary, cocoon for yourself, because hey, even when animals tend to their wounds and they're having trouble, or they're giving birth, or they're healing from an injury or an infection, what do animals do? They find a safe space. They hide away in a cave or in a brushy area or under a tree or whatever, a rock. They find a hiding area and they just let themselves be healed, right? They're not even doing anything. They're letting themselves be healed. And so I feel like you might have taken a similar approach, where you find this safe space, this comfort zone, and you create that space in order to allow what needs to be addressed, to be resolved, to be healed, cleared, whatever it was for you, because it's going to look different for everybody. And now you're finally sort of coming out of that, like the groundhog, right? Who's peeping up and taking a look. But it feels like it's like you finally stepped out of that hole, or from behind the rock, or from under the tree, or from out of that cave. And you're looking at this whole new world, and it's bright, and it's big, and it's beautiful, and it's colorful, and it's vibrant, which is very different from how it is when you are more withdrawn or isolated or enclosed or in a safe space that might be relatively dark. And now you're spreading your wings and you're able to fly. So you're leaving sort of the comfort zone of that healing space behind, having tended to your wounds, having developed more resources, more capacity, more groundedness and anchoredness, and you're stepping out of that phase and out of that experience. You're spreading your wings and you're moving on. You're carrying on. I do feel like some of you are still facing some of those old fears, and or you have some of those hungry ghosts in your inner world, but you're not feeding them. You know how to manage them. You know what they represent or stand for. You might have them, any meaning that you wanted to pull from that or gain from that. I feel like you have what you need to carry on, right? So it's like that example of when you're out in the wilderness and you're hiking, right? You'll probably bring flashlight, because it can get dark at night. You're going to bring a compass in case you might lose your way. You're going to bring food, that way if you get hungry, or water if you're thirsty. You're going to have the tools that you might need to boil water or to put up a tent. So it's like you are back out in the elements, but now you're more resourced to be able to address what you need to address when you need to address it. So it's not like the elements disappear. It's not like the sun disappears, or the need for food disappears, or water, or that you won't face a bobcat or whatever. It doesn't mean like all that disappears. It just means that, okay, now you're positioned to be able to face it and manage it and do what you need to do in the moment and carry on. Okay. So let's see what else is here. Yeah, it's like for a long time you were in this deep healing phase, or challenging phase, repair phase. It's like healing could be relevant. That definitely felt that for card piles 1 and 2, but this feels like repair work after trauma, or a series of trauma, or working through trauma, or something like that, to where now and even if it wasn't trauma, it could feel like that, right? The experience of healing can feel very traumatizing. And I would imagine I would still consider it trauma, even if we didn't think to call it trauma. All of that to say, you went through a period of really like a lot of things sort of went quiet and dormant within yourself. So maybe a lot of excitement that you once had quieted, right? Maybe a lot of zest for life that you once had went dormant. The big light that you had sort of went out. Maybe if you're even sensual or whatever kind of person that has a lot of life force energy in all of those areas, bodily, energy in terms of, so someone who enjoys, say, earthly pleasures. I'm trying to find ways to code all of this. But all of that to say, you might have been someone who was like that. And then through this period, a lot of that went quiet and dormant. It was because your energy was being used up for the things that needed to. It was like it was using the energy that you might usually have or put toward other things, with creativity, passion, excitement, love, sensuality, earthly pleasures, that kind of thing, where it was once being applied to that, it was being turned inward, and you were just in a more inward time, inward focus of repair work and healing work that was churning for a while there. And now you've stepped up and out. And so you'll find that a lot of these energies do return. I don't feel like they're there completely yet, but they're on their way. It's like where it had once been sort of turned off, right? Now it's slowly turning back on. It's not going to go from 0 to 100. It's like gushing out of a faucet, but it's going to be like a trickle, and then more of a trickle. And then it's like all of that's coming back, all of that's coming back online as you step out of this healing phase or this repair phase of healing from these traumas. But this energy was being used for that trauma, or to resolve the trauma, or whatever. Our body, mind, spirits are incredibly intelligent and wise. They know exactly what to do and when, as long as we're supporting them. And even when we're not supporting them, they're still trying their best their darndest to do what we need, whether we know it, realize it, or help it out or not. So it was using the energy that it had and the ways that that were required at that time. And now it's going to be putting back into your desires. So you're going to find that you have more desire again. Your body, it comes alive with desires and passions and the zest for life or vitality that once perhaps went missing. I feel like you had also, in a lack of feeling safe and secure, quieted those desires, even subconsciously for yourself. Like, okay, I can't deal with that right now, or that could make me feel unsafe, or that could bring me into a dangerous situation, so I'll just turn that off. So, right, an example is, let's just say someone was, there was some kind of trauma that, gosh, how do I code this? Let's just say there's certain behaviors that lead to a potential for danger or trauma. And so if we do experience that, we're going to be more than likely to turn that off and stop doing that to keep ourselves safe. But ultimately, it might be desire that it's healthy for us. So all of that to say, your desires are coming back online. And if they're not, you might explore them on your own and start to create more safety and security, or get the help to do so within your inner body, so that these old passions and desires can return. Because where they were once being suppressed or lying dormant, they are either being activated now or kindled now, but you might want to support it with some kindling here, and create the space too. And you will have created significant amount of safety, like we were talking about, that well-resourced and groundedness before. But I feel like there is an availability here for even more receptivity, even more openness, even more safety within yourself to allow these desires to come up and out, and to experience like your inner wildness or wild nature, those parts of you, those animal instincts or urges or primal urges and things that keep us alive and feeling zestful and vital and full of life force. We can tend to turn those off. Either our body does subconsciously, mind, body, spirit, or we do. Even consciously, I'm not doing that anymore. Forget it. Never mind. We can turn that off, and then it's kind of hard to get it back, right? So creating more safety, continuing down this path, but stepping out of your comfort zone, still spreading your wings, but noting, tuning in, listening to yourself, supporting yourself to feel and to get more and more comfortable with feeling, and edging outside of your comfort zone, but doing it slowly or steadily, or as you feel safe, as you feel supported. If you need the support, then get that, so that you can support yourself to step out of any numbness that is still there, and or suppressed desires, so that you can step into a feeling of greater and greater safety, to allow for this stuff to not only come up in your body, but then allow it in your life. Yeah, it's saying for so long here, you were carrying the weight of so much baggage. Whatever this trauma was, or series of traumas was, it was extremely heavy, and it was burdening. It was like carrying a giant boulder on your back, or a backpack full of all this stuff, and you were just heavy. And now it's saying, now it's okay. You've come out of that. You've repaired that. It's okay to come out. It's okay to dream again. It's okay to have fun again. It's okay to feel again. It's okay to get vulnerable again. It's okay to connect with people again. It's okay to find intimacy with others again. It's okay. You can come out now. It's going to be all right. And if you don't feel that way, and that's not true in your physical reality, please do double check, right? Checks and balances system here. If you're not safe, which I feel like you are, like the energy is saying you are, but if for any reason that's not the case, please don't listen to this reading. Please listen to what's actually happening in your reality, and get the help to change that, and or address some of the things we've been talking about here in terms of your inner experience. It does feel like for a long time where you were burdened, and now it's almost like scared to come out. And it's like, no, you can come out now. You can dream again. It's going to be okay. And it's not going to be as bad as it once was. And that cycle is over, and you're going to be all right, and everything's going to be okay. And it's okay to dream again. And it's okay to try again. And it's okay to put yourself out there again. And it's okay to spread your wings again. So card pile 3, that is your comeback. That is your reading after a long period of what feels like a time of dormant or slumber or repair or healing from trauma after a long time of carrying all that weight on your back, you are resolving that, you've cleared that, you're stepping out into the sunlight again, and you get to enjoy life again. You can dream again, you can have fun again, you can come alive again. So card pile 3, that's your comeback. Do check out erritygreen.com, which is my website. You're also welcome to check out my other socials and my other YouTube channels, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, card pile 3. All right, so card pile 4, we are talking about your comeback. So I feel like you have come to a place of really, I don't want to say really great peace. That sounds so vague and sort of bland, but it's not. It feels so good. Where you're at peace with your life, at peace with yourself, at peace with your place in the universe. I feel like for it to be there, there must have been a time of an experience of more tumultuousness, where you weren't really sure, right? You weren't really sure how it was going to work out. You weren't really sure about life. Maybe you had lost trust or faith, or were being challenged in that regard, or maybe had multiple tests of faith, where you were sort of like, it feels like being in a boat in a really rocky, tumultuous waters, and just kind of uncertain of your fate, right? Uncertain when the sun would come out again, or if the waters would clear or become calm, or if you would ever see the shore again or find the shore again. And I feel like you found shore. I feel like you have found a great peace within yourself. It just feels so good. And so I don't really know how to give words to it, to be honest, because it's a feeling state. And I imagine, though, if you've chosen card pile 4, that you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you feel at peace, you feel okay, you feel like everything's going to be all right. It's actually a really, I think, underrated feeling to feel at peace, where I feel like a lot of people are always looking for those highs, right? Those spiritual highs, those emotional highs of joy and ecstasy and but to truly be at peace, to find ground, to find shore, like we talked about in your example, and to just be okay, and to feel okay with life, and to trust your path, trust yourself, trust where you're going, trust where you're headed. I mean, that's a really phenomenal place to be. And again, it feels so good for the human to feel that way, especially in such an uncertain, unpredictable, and even challenging world at times, just to feel at peace. And I feel like this was fated. This was a part of your destiny, a part of your plan, a part of your soul's plan, to find this level of peace and inner knowing. It's like inner peace. That's what it is. Inner peace, inner knowing, a harmony. And I feel like you get this experience from being more connected with truth, spirit, God, great spirit, the higher perspective, the cosmos, the universe, source. When we are operating more from our limited human form, and I'm not getting a lot of that here, so I'm sharing it because I like to share contrast. You know what I mean by, okay, how is this different from before? And this is supposed to be a comeback, right? But it's like, it's difficult to be at peace with things because we're fighting it, we're resisting what is, we're resisting what's before us, or what's in front of us, or what happened in the past, or what we didn't like, or it didn't go our way, or we don't like this, or we don't like that. This isn't adding up. This isn't lining up. It didn't match our timetable. It didn't go the way that I wanted, or thought, or hoped for, or sought, or whatever. There's a lot of resistance, and we can fight that all day long as a human, right? Because it's not just about finding inner peace when things are perfect or at ease, although I do feel calmer waters for you, and I want to make that clear. This isn't just calm waters inside your soul. It's a calming in general of the rockiness of your experience that was there for a time, or whatever tumultuousness was there. But I think there's been a peace that's been found in your life, within yourself, as well as an outer peace. Like, things have calmed, the waters have calmed, the storms have passed, and you've again found yourself on ground, or on shore again, 2 feet on the ground, feeling at peace. And there was a lingering thought here, just a moment. It's an inner peace, an inner satisfaction, an inner trust, and it's a trust with life itself, with God, great spirit, cosmos, higher universe, higher power. When we're more aligned with that perspective versus our limited human perspective, we're much more available to being in a place of trust, of faith. Right? We're no longer resisting it and fighting it because we're at peace with what actually is, versus trying to make it something else, or resent, or resist, or fight against what has been or what was. It's just a place of surrender also, of, okay, it's not that way, it is this way now. Now here's what's interesting. This isn't a mental or cognitive process. It wasn't like you said, okay, I'm resisting, and okay, I'm no longer resisting. I have come back. The waters have calmed, everybody. It's not like that. It's not like this was a cognitive process or a conscious process of, I was here and now I've decided to be here. This was a very natural, organic process, even fated process, where you're coming into a place of greater inner peace, greater inner harmony, greater inner flow, greater inner trust. And you're really trusting your path, yourself, your vision for your life, who you are, where you're going, where you're headed, what's being given to you, what's being presented to you. It's just operating from life from a greater awareness. But it feels like a greater connection, right? Because the awareness piece would imply that we always know or have a certainty or some kind of predictability. And that's not necessarily what's here. It's just a greater trust and a greater inner peace and a greater harmony and a greater inner flow. And when we're in flow, that's where we find that inner connection, that inner peace. It's when we're fighting against it that we tend to feel separate or disconnected from that. So I feel like, this was a fated change. It's sort of like coming more into your higher self or embodying more of your higher self or your soul's wisdom or your soul's truth. But there is no hierarchy, doesn't mean that our human's bad and our higher self is good and all these sort of dichotomies or judgments we create as human beings. It just feels like you're operating from a more serene place. You're operating from a more peaceful state. You're operating from a greater level of trust, a greater level of and sense of security and safety and comfort. And you're at peace. And so that's your comeback. It's interesting. Your comeback is peace. Interesting. So let's keep going with this. So yeah, after a time of, I feel like, withdrawing, what's interesting, and I kind of caught this in the other piles too, so I'll share it here as well. We are doing a reading on your comeback, and I'm honestly not getting a whole lot of past energy from any one of these piles. And I think the reason is because that has come to a close or completion, or it's been resolved or whatever, like you've moved on it or past it, you're beyond it. So why give energy attention to the past? Especially if it's gone, why feed it or give more attention to it? So most of the energy that's being given here, it's very blank. Like this is the way the past was. It hardly dives into it and just presents where you are now or where you're headed. I think that's smart. I think that's wise and intelligent of the universe and the energies presented here. So we aren't, bringing up too much stuff from the past that honestly is no longer relevant or has transpired or expired for you. With that said, we are getting a very blank statement of just really quick to the point energy of, okay, there was a time of withdrawal or isolation or turning inward or reflection. And it's literally not giving me anything else. There's a reason for that. And I feel like it's because you've come to peace with all of that. Like, it's like, what I'm saying when I say that. So there's really no reason for me to rehash it. And sometimes I feel like there is a draw for me to kind of give some examples or give some energy or offer something, some nuggets or breadcrumbs so that you can kind of place it, understand it, and be like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. But for card pile four, I feel like you faced it all. You know very well what I'm talking about. There's been that experience of, facing the music, so to speak, where, you have to face all the things. And so when I say you've made peace with it or you've made peace, you know what I'm talking about and you've moved on. And so there isn't a need for me to like lay it out, outline it, specify it, write an essay or give you an essay about it. And you actually might even appreciate and acknowledge that in terms of like, oh yeah, I have made peace with that. That really means a lot that, she's offered that and acknowledge that. Because you've made peace with it all. And so now you're moving forward. And this feels like, let me see how I want to give words to this. This level of peace, this level of groundedness, this level of sort of security and connection within yourself has given birth to a new experience, a new life, a new beginning, a new chapter, a new vision, a new dream. And it feels interesting because when I say that, I feel like some of those words are strained, which means, it's not a perfect alignment when I say those words. And so for some of you, some of these words will land and match and resonate, and some of you, they won't, and only one or two of them will. Meaning, some of you will be like, well, it's not a new vision, it's an old vision. I'm just approaching it in a different way. Or some of you will be like, this is 100% a new vision, right? So I feel like it's more of you're approaching life in a different way, and therefore there's new experience to be had, or new directions to go, or new ways to approach things, or new embodiments, or new ways that you're showing up. And you might even be doing the exact same things you were doing before, but you're showing up with different energy. You're showing up with a level of refreshed or refreshing vitality or refreshing peace, trust, faith, where things don't feel so wishy-washy, wobbly, topsy-turvy, up and down, this way and that. It feels grounded, connected, wholesome, fulfilled, satisfied, content, at peace. There's an inner, again, harmony, trust, flow, and faith here. So when you're showing up that way, that gives birth to new possibilities. And even if they aren't, quote unquote, brand new, right? You might still be having the same job or the same vision. Some of you have changed it, but it might take new form, right? But be essentially the same, right? Different way, but essentially the same. What I mean, we might all have this vision, this culmination, the mountaintop, some idea or essence of what that culmination is, what that summit is, or whatever. But ultimately, there's like 100 different ways up the mountain. So you might be approaching it differently. You might be approaching your hike up the mountain in a different way, or taking a different path, or both. But I do feel like this is an aligned path for you. You are in alignment. You are feeling better. You're feeling sound. So it's interesting because I could say you're feeling better. You're feeling joyful, but it doesn't feel like that. You're feeling sound. You're feeling whole. You're feeling at peace. You're feeling grounded, anchored, centered, trustful, right? It feels like that energy, and it's giving birth to new life, to new ways of doing things, to new approaches, to new directions, to new paths. Right? Even if you are headed in the same direction or a similar direction, it's from a different viewpoint, mindset, embodiment, approach. And it feels much better for you. It feels much truer for you. And it feels, I'm trying to gather a word for this energy, and we'll see if something else comes, but it escapes me at this point. So I'm going to contemplate with your cards because I want to see how this energy connects, see if a word does want to come through with that energy, and I will return shortly. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit more detail here. So I feel like because of the approach that you're taking, because of the difference in energy, because of the level of groundedness and sort of certainty, not in, the 3D stuff, but certainty within yourself, and just walking with that, things are going to be, you're going to see things differently. So I guess you can see I'm struggling with the words here, but you might look at the exact same thing, but you're going to see it differently, right? Again, you might be doing the exact same thing, but you're doing it differently. You might be going through that same exact motion, but you're feeling different and you're approaching it different. And so you're seeing things now that you might not have seen before, even though you did the same thing before. Does that make sense? And so I feel like new possibilities are going to open up, new potentials are going to emerge. I feel like new levels of creativity are going to emerge. These could be, in terms of creativity, it could be new ideas, new visions, new ambitions, new aspirations, but it could also be new ways of doing it, new solutions, new sort of, I don't say detours and shortcuts, but where we have at times in our lives, we have a really set idea of how things are going to work or go. We really can't see outside of that. We can only kind of see that way. And it's like, more paths will be revealed, more routes, new avenues, new channels where the energy wants to flow. There's just more availability for change, but also again, new directions, new growth, new potentials, new beginnings, new shifts, different paths, different ways. It feels very innovative, and it feels very fresh, and it feels very revelatory, and it feels very supportive. So you're going to see things where you once did not, and it's going to open up a whole new level of creativity within yourself, if it hasn't already. So you might find that you're doing new things, trying new things, exploring new things, but you might also find that you just feel different, or that new things are revealed in doing the same things you once did or did before. I feel like for card pile 4, we got a really good kind of sound. And I think because you're so at peace and because you found this level of peace, we weren't maybe given the same level of, you got a lot of substance, but you didn't get a whole lot of kind of material to work with. And I am tempted to pull you another card. Let me see, I might do that. Okay, so I got it. This new level of creativity, because your new approach, your new mindset, your new way of seeing things, this new energy, this new embodiment, because you're able to see things and it opens up new potentials, avenues, routes, etc. It's going to guide you to this either new vision or higher vision or bigger vision or changed vision, or perhaps it was a vision before, but I do feel like it's changed in some way, because it doesn't feel like it's connected to the path. It does feel like it's refreshed or renewed in some way, and perhaps it has to do with your refreshed and renewed energy that you're approaching it with. But because of this new level of creativity, this sort of unbound by the old way or the way it had to be or the way it was done before, and because you're approaching it with such sort of certainty and anchoredness and groundedness and trust and faith and peace and harmony and fulfillment and satisfaction, that sound kind of feeling, it supports this vision, this something of your destiny to unfold, to be revealed, to be manifested, to be realized. Because this level of harmony, like we said, is very much connected to your destiny. It was destined. It was fated. This was meant to come through for you. This was meant to be revealed. It was meant to emerge through this experience, whatever experience you had, whatever chapter it was, wherever you found yourself now, this was meant to emerge. And it's what helps give way or give birth to this greater dream, destiny, fated manifestation. So some of those feel a little bit off or unaligned. So that could be because for some of you, it's going to look different, or you resonate with a different word when I say it. But ultimately, it brings about that greater vision, this new level of creativity, or these new directions, or new paths or new avenues, these other paths that you're taking up the mountain, where you once were just dead set on one. You didn't realize there were infinite ways up the mountain, or at least a number of ways up the mountain. Now it's going to open up new potentials, new possibilities for that vision to be revealed, where before maybe it wasn't happening the way that you wanted, or you felt stuck, or it wasn't going anywhere, or whatever. Now things are opening up, they're being revealed, so that this fated thing, this destined thing, this whatever dream or aspiration or ambition or manifestation that you wanted or have sought for, waited for, worked for, tried for, whatever, can now be revealed, will be revealed. It's a part of your fate. It's a part of your destiny. It is inevitable. And now you sort of opened up the possibilities so that this can now come forward and sort of be dropped in or birthed for you or through you. So this can now be revealed. Whatever this was, whatever it is you were searching toward, this could be work and career. This could be relationships and love. This could be all of the above. It could be a creative endeavor, expression, or project. But you're working towards something that's fated and destined to be manifested. And now with this level of this new approach, this new mindset, this new experience that you're sort of embodying and experiencing, you're making it available. So as an example, and this will be a really great way to ground it, and the reading for you is, let's just say, right, you were in that tumultuous experience on the boat and it was really rocky. Let's just say you're out in that boat and you're like, all right, I just want a mansion, baby. And this is like silly, right? But I'm just giving you a really simple analogy here. I want a mansion. I want it to be built like this and this amount of rooms or whatever. That's a really good daydream when you're on a boat and stuck in the storm. It's like, shoot, whatever you got to do to get through that, by all means. But it's like, there's really no grounding for it. There's no rooting for it. It's not even available as an option, right? You're on a boat in the middle of nowhere. It's tumultuous. There's a storm. There's no sun out. You have no resources. You have no help. There's no way of actually manifesting this mansion, even though it's nice to hope and dream about. And it might be a great escape or fantasy while you're out there in those tumultuous waters, but there's really no possibility for it to be realized. Does that make sense? Even though you're like dead set on it or wanting to make it happen or trying to make it happen or whatever. Well, now that you've landed upon shore, upon ground again, the skies have cleared, there's resources available on this island. Now you're in a position to actually ground that vision, to make that happen, to realize that aspiration, dream, ambition, or goal. So that's your comeback, card pile 4. It's a newfound experience of life, a newfound trust, faith in life, inner peace, inner harmony that ultimately brings you about to greater creativity, or even different approaches to your creativity or the things that you do. Even if you're going through the same motions, you might be showing up to it in a different way or trying it a new way or whatever, that ultimately leads to this greater manifestation, dream, or destiny that you've long since held and now can be revealed for you. So card pile 4, I do look forward to hearing your feedback. Of course, check out my website, erritygreen.com, my socials below, my other YouTube channels, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, card pile 4.